I'll tell you an interesting bit of trivia in a way. He says he started off questioning very important people. He doesn't really name them, but we can see he's questioning people like Protagoras, who claims that he's the wisest man alive. Protagoras' followers literally called him the wisest man alive. So it seems like he was probably one of the first people. We don't know the chronology exactly, but he was probably one of the first people that Socrates made a beeline for and said, okay, let's test out whether this guy is actually wise or not. And basically by asking him Socratic questions and proving that he contradicted himself or tripped himself up. So Socrates thought, okay, so, if the oracle says that this dude isn't wiser than me, then that's not really such a dramatic thing because, his wisdom is an illusion, like it's just an appearance. And he challenged certain statesmen probably as well. I think this is kind of reading between the lines a bit, but scholars of Plato have noted that it looks like over time, Socrates increasingly begins to do philosophy with young men. And initially, he went to great statesmen, great philosophers, and I think he went to the people who claimed to be wise and found that they weren't wise, and probably discovered that actually the more someone claims to be wise, the more closed-minded they are, and the less useful they are as a partner in dialogue. And so he began, and then I'd like to say, then he went to the youth of Athens, who nobody considered to be wise, right? Because he thought, these guys at least are going to engage in a proper dialogue with me because they've got nothing to lose. They're not pretending to be wise. Nobody thinks of them as wise. So they're flexible and open-minded and more willing to admit when they make mistakes. And so they make much better, more dynamic partners in dialogue. I'll tell you another bit of trivia about Socrates. Socrates, we can see, and he was known for this, went around doing philosophy. So he did philosophy in the marketplace. He went to his friends' houses. We're told he just bumped into people in the street and got into philosophical dialogues with them. He did philosophy with the rich, the poor, Athenians, foreigners, slaves, and perhaps most controversially of all, he did philosophy with women. So in one of Xenophon's dialogues, he's speaking to a famous courtesan, a prostitute, doing philosophy with her, which might not seem like a big deal, but to Athenians, that would have been kind of shocking. Now, one of his favourite arguments is whether or not virtue can be taught. And this was perhaps the most subversive thing that he discussed. The fact that he's doing philosophy with women and slaves and poor people suggests that he thinks virtue is learnable. Otherwise, what would be the point? Speaking to people that Athenian society didn't consider to be wise or virtuous, right? Now, this was controversial because, very simply, Greek culture assumed that aristocrats were virtuous. So
at birth.
Yeah, like they literally just describe it as noble birth.
Yeah.
Like, so the best people in society are wealthy aristocrats. Like, and of course, there's a social hierarchy, and everybody else is inferior. Slaves are inferior. Foreigners and barbarians are inferior to Athenians, and women are inferior to men. And they have this kind of rigid hierarchical view of society. And they think it's genetic. Like, they think you're like literally just born with courage and wisdom and virtue and stuff. And maybe training can help to bring that out. But the idea that poor people, women and foreigners could learn virtue would upset the social hierarchy. Like, so the very fact that Socrates was talking about that and questioning it helps to explain why they executed him. Because what he was doing was much more radical than it seems at first. It was more egalitarian, and it rocked the social order. Sometimes people think it's they're kind of struggle with the idea that Socrates was executed. I think one of the biggest puzzles about Socrates is why they didn't kill him sooner. Like,
he was 71.
He was 71.
Yeah.
Like, they waited until he was nearly dying of old age anyway.
And then accused of what?
Impiety and corrupting the youth, like, basically. These are kind of like standard charges in Athenian society. So, yeah, they accused him of corrupting the youth is like a key part of it. And turning them against their parents, like subverting the social order.
And not to divert you too much, but then how did he respond as opposed to denying the accusations? How did he, in his trial, show up?
Well, in Plato's Apology, he responds very unapologetically. So there's many things. I mean, I think Plato's Apology is a masterpiece. So, it's difficult to know where to begin, and so I think everyone should read it, right? It's one of the few texts that I would just categorically recommend that everyone should just go out and read. But a lot of things happen in it. So one of them is that Socrates basically just does philosophy in the courtroom. Like, he just uses... So he's on trial for doing the Socratic method. They're basically putting him on trial for doing the Socratic method, and he does it in the courtroom. He does the thing that he's on trial for in the courtroom, basically. And the jury vote and find him guilty by a narrow margin. And then the way that the Athenian court worked was they would vote on your guilt and then they vote on the penalty. So more people voted for the death penalty than found him guilty, which is like, so some of the dudes that found him innocent changed their mind at the last minute and voted that he should be executed, like in the space of like a few minutes at the end. So his response to the guilty verdict just upset the jury even more. There were 300 people in the jury, by the way. It's like a big group of people voting, and kind of like a mob. They were quite unruly, and so I think 3 times in the apology they have to be told to calm down.
Are there any modern cinema representations of that moment that you know of?
Not that I'm sure there might be some, maybe in other languages. There's a play starring Christopher Walken as Socrates' son, Lamprocles, called Barefoot in Athens from the 60s. It's like a TV show. It doesn't show his trial, though, I don't think, but it kind of depicts his life pretty well. So yeah, like essentially that's what goes on in the trial. But lots of other things happen. He talks about his attitude toward death. He talks about his military service. He doesn't forward really complete arguments in the apology, but he drops in these little kind of seeds or fragments of philosophical arguments. It's very intriguing, but it's, again, sort of tantalizing and inconclusive. You take away like bits of ideas and fragments of arguments from it.